last fall, actually last summer, there was a call put out for a job to be the artistic director of a project for the Olympics. 2010 Olympics, Vancouver, Winter Olympics. And I saw the call go out on an artist's listserv. And I thought, well, that's interesting. That looks like something I could probably do. And I sent an email inquiring, what's the salary? When are the dates? They sent an email back, and they sent me the budget, and they gave me the dates. And the first thing I did is I went to the artistic director's salary, and I looked at it, and I thought, that is way too low. That is a huge job, and there's no way that I would work for that amount of money. So I let it go. A couple of weeks later, after the date for the request for proposals passed, I went to a movie. Came out of the movie, and I saw the woman who would put out the call for the request for proposals. And she said, Celia, I thought you were going to apply. You sent in that email inquiring, and we didn't get your request for proposal, and we were really, really disappointed. And I said, oh, yeah, I looked at the budget, and I just thought, that's like highway robbery. I rail against paying artists too little for what the amount of work that they're doing. And she said, oh, well, that's a malleable budget. You could, as the artistic director, you could move some of the money over here and put it in there if you'd want. And I said, oh, well, that's too bad. Oh, well, bye. But she called me. She called me a couple of days later, and she said, we've gone over the request for proposals, and we're not really happy with what we got. Are you interested in submitting something? And I said, oh, well, I'll think about it. She said, remember, you can move that money from over there down into it. And I said, okay, well, I'll meditate on that. And I went out to lunch, and I was talking with a friend, and I was telling her all the reasons why I didn't want this job. It's too this and it's too that and the Olympics, and I don't care about that. And who wants to create a show with 100 people running with streamers across a big stage? It's not my thing. And she said, oh, well, that's all good, Celia. That's all fine, but as long as it's not fear. It was. I was terrified. I was terrified of this gigantic project. There's no way that I could do a project of that size. It's too big. But as soon as I named the fact that I was afraid, I could then begin to walk through it. I could then begin to do the thing that I thought I couldn't do. And I was talking with another friend, and I said, I just don't think I can do it. It's too big. And he said, Celia, I went on the website of the guy that's producing the thing down in Vancouver. And he said, I'm looking at this guy, and it's just a guy. And if he's producing the victory ceremonies, why couldn't you do this? I said, oh, well, you're probably right. Maybe I can. And once I got my head around the fact that the only thing that was stopping me was fear, and I admitted to the fear. I said, yes, that's it. I'm terrified. Something started to happen. Creative ideas started to flow into me. And instead of this cynical thing of thinking that I'd have to create something with 100 little children running across the stage with streamers, I started to get ideas that were organic to who I am as an artist and what I would like to do and how I would like to express the Yukon, which was the project, showcasing Yukon culture for the 2010 Olympics. And I did that job. And let me tell you, I hit all kinds of roadblocks. All kinds of roadblocks where all my greatest fears were coming up. The fear of failure. The fear of success. Don't ask me how you can have both, but it's possible. The fear of being criticized. The fear of what other people are going to think of me. The fear of being exposed on such a huge level. And I just hit all of these fears one after the other. And I walked through them. I walked through them. And at one point, the terror was so big, and I felt overwhelmed, and I thought, I can't do this. It's too much. It's too hard. And I was telling this to a friend on the telephone, and I said, I'm not afraid. I'm going to do it. I'm going to charge forward and I'm going to keep moving through it. And she said, Celia, have you ever heard of a film called The Inn of the Sixth Happiness? And I said, no. She said, that's okay. Nobody else has either. And she said, The Inn of the Sixth Happiness is a film that was made in the 1950s starring Ingrid Bergman. And it's based on the true story of Gladys Aylward. And Gladys Aylward was a missionary who went to China to serve selflessly. And I'm not going to tell you the whole plot of the film, but Gladys gets to China, Ingrid Bergman, and she becomes known in the community as someone who's willing to help, to serve completely selflessly. And there's a riot in the prison. And the prison warden won't go in to deal with the riot. And they're going to kill all the prisoners to deal with the problem. And Gladys says, you can't do that. Let me go in and talk to them. And they said, you're crazy. You're a woman. You're nuts. They'll kill you. And she said, I'm going to try. So she rides the horse across the Chinese landscape, which was actually, I think, somewhere in Northern California. And she gets to the prison and she gets off the horse and she's standing at the gate to the prison and you can hear the rioters inside the prison. It's terrible. They're screaming. You can hear shots. You can hear people dying. And the prison warden himself, who would not go through, says to her, aren't you afraid? And she says, yes, I am afraid. Now open the gate. And he opens the gate and she goes in. She observes them and she talks to them. And they stop rioting. And I'm on the phone with my friend and she says, Celia, you don't have to say, I'm not afraid, I'm going to do it. She says, you can say, yes, I am afraid. Now open the gate. And so what I have learned in this journey that I'm on of walking through my fear and sharing with other people how we can walk through our fear is not necessarily this idea of conquering our fear altogether and overcoming our fear and becoming fearless people. But that in fact, fearlessness is really about facing our fears. It's about being willing to walk through our fears. It's about being willing to say, yes, I am afraid. Now open the gate. Ladies and gentlemen.